Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. We begin in South Africa, where its public postage service, which has been in a financial crisis and facing collapse, has now been placed under provisional liquidation. The liquidation of the South African Post Office, which is cracking under debt of over 4 billion rand, comes after a successful court application by one of its creditors.
Despite massive bailouts, the state-owned entity has slowly faced collapse and will see about 6,000 jobs on the line due to looming retrenchments. It has until the 1st of June before the provisional liquidation is made final. Joining us now to discuss this further is Aubrey Shabalala, the Secretary General of the Communication Workers Union. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. Aubrey, can you please give us some background of how the post office find itself here? How did we get to this conversation about the liquidation?
Well, firstly, good morning to you and viewers at home. One of the challenges that led us to be where we are, amongst others, is the fact that the legislation in the South African government actually bottlenecks the business and the operation of the post office in favor of multinational, definitely European companies that comes into the space of Korean postal services. Secondly, the issues of corruption by its all margins. And at that point, the issues of accountability per se. But all in all, we know that the post office has super business prospects to thrive. That's not the case as we stand. So the creditors that are there at the post office have not been paid for some time. So they found themselves, I would say, creative ways of getting themselves paid over the couple of months now. From time to time, they will go to court and put post office under provisional liquidation. And by that, it means that either post office face a complete liquidation or it's somehow going to pay them immediately so that you can settle the matter. And as we have just received the news now, that is exactly what has happened. But till when? Because obviously after this there will be another creditor coming to the play.
Well, let's talk about the workers now. How do they cope, and how does all of this affect them? They rely, of course, heavily on the post office for their living wage. So tell us about the workers and, of course, the people who use the post office. How does this affect them?
Well, it's a devastating situation. Workers are under a situation where now the actually anxiety because from time to time when you go to work, you're not so sure whether your company will still be sustainable, you'll still be employed or not, because these news are coming thick and fast. So it puts a strain on workers themselves with the news that even today we are going to sit around the table on the issues of retrenchment in terms of Section 189 of the Labor Relations Act, meaning that it's going to retrenchment. So workers are in the state that it's very not satisfactory. The people that rely on post offices, the poor, are also facing challenges because every now and then we hear that there are branches that have been closed down. So when the branches are closed down, it means those people who are earning social grants through government grants, they have to now either dig into their pockets, go extra distance to look for the nearest pay point where they can have their social grants. We're talking about elders here, people living with disabilities and so forth, and also expose them into things like, crime, because obviously they're going to carry a lot of money with them. So these are the challenges that we face. As a result, now just on Monday, 3 of our members who are workers of post office were shot dead in an ambush attack. So it's a situation that we are facing because of lack of security in that space.
Let's talk about the monies that was received sometime, in February. The post office did receive a 4.4 billion rand bailout from the National Treasury. Would you say that this was any help to change things around, or would you say that this was administered properly?
Well, it's actually 2.4 billion rand.
Oh, thank you for that, pointing that out.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it has not landed into the coffers of post offices yet. But we believe that that money is not enough If you look into the debts of post office, we're talking over 8 billion rands debts alone. But you also have a responsibility of turning things around in terms of revamping the infrastructure, align it to the new technologies way of doing business. That's a second point, but also looking to the cybercrime security issues. All of those things need money. So if you have to only focus on 2.4 billion rands, it's not sufficient. So it's not going to go any distance to assist post office. Hence, even yesterday, as a trade union, when we met the portfolio committee of Parliament, we expressed this thing and we said that the Treasury must look into this issue and try to address it accordingly.
All right, I want to share something that I saw while looking through the post office, the issues with the post office. It says here, or someone here says, South Africa was a prosperous country with a growing economy 29 years ago. The ANC government took over and reduced it to less. It says they destroyed ESCOM and the post office and infrastructure. So I want to get your views on, if the ANC and, of course, if President Cyril Ramaphosa's government, is also partly to blame for the way that things have been handled. We did speak about the SABC yesterday and, attempts to, of course, to set up a new board and, maybe also bring it back to the shining light that, it should be. But would you say that Cyril Ramaphosa's government should be blamed here for the failure of the post office, and all the things that we're currently speaking about?
Well, these issues are historical, and you can't shift the blame, unfortunately, from the government because it's actually a fact and it's scientific to say that things have deteriorated. And we will not necessarily say Cyril Ramaphosa's government, but we'll have to look at it holistically when the ANC took over till now. And without necessarily saying apartheid was bad or good, but we are saying that things have deteriorated. We talk ESCOM, there's challenges. We talk SAPC, there's challenges. Now it's post office in all the state-owned entities. And all these state-owned entities that we're talking about were one giant SOEs in Africa and some in Europe. But the deterioration now led to a situation where they are not sustainable and they have proper business prospects that they can thrive. So the government cannot be shifted from the blame. Actually, I will say that the 70 to 80% is entirely on government to be blamed on these issues.
Liquidation usually is the last resort and follows a failed, business rescue process in many situations. I mean, it's not the first point of call. Would you say that there maybe should have been any interventions that have happened or that should have happened since this announcement in February?
Well, first thing, post office is a state-owned entity. What does it mean? It means that it's owned by government. Now, if we are to go into South Africa and look into most of the government departments, government at the regional level, at the provincial level, at national level, and ask them, who are you using as your postal and courier services as a service provider? You'll come back to me, you'll tell me that they all use multinational companies. And that's per annum, they spend over 20 billion rands. To me, if you take only 60% of government business into post office, that's already a bailout. So you don't need a rocket science to actually bail out the South African post office. You don't need to give it money for free, but there's work to be done to provide with the hospital services and health sector, at education sector and school, everywhere else. The post office has opportunities, but the political will to really make the SOE or the state-owned entity successful is not there. So that's where we are sitting. So whether you bring the issues of business rescue and so forth, but when you bottleneck the operations of the post office through the legislations and allowing the liberalization of the market, which is not a problem, by the way, we're not opposed to that. But when you allow it by bottlenecking the SOE, it creates that particular problem. So that's where we are sitting. So even before you go to the business rescue and others, we have to do the introspection and say, have we given a post office sufficient ground to be able to be self-productive and self-sustainable?
All right, Mr. Shabalala, thank you so much for your time this morning. We will keep up to date with the happenings surrounding the post office, and we do hope that things get better from here on.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having us.